Hello, this is Jim Zuber with QualityLogic, and I'm going to provide you with a brief tour of the EPRI VTN. The first thing you'll want to do is to log in using the default login passwords to the EPRI VTN. The default username is admin, and the password is testing. Click the little software terms agreement and click login, and you'll be taken to the opening screen of the EPRI VTN. Let's walk through a few of the menu options. Starting at the bottom, there's an option to download the EPRI VEN. That's kind of the client side of OpenADR, and we'll be using the EPRI VEN, which looks like this, to do some of the examples in this video walkthrough. You can download the user guide to the EPRI VTN from this menu option. And QualityLogic has made a number of enhancements to the EPRI VTN, most notably the ability to look at logs of payload transactions, and this describes how to use those additional QualityLogic specific features. This allows the TOU schedules option, allows you to set time of use schedules that get published once a week to a VTN. The VTN config options allows you to set up a variety of sort of global settings for the VTN. The view log menu option allows you to look at a payload transactions. Status and export allows you to look at telemetry data in a graphical format from your VENs. The accounts option allows you to set up both administrative and non-administrative users that can use the VTN. The VENs menu option allows you to basically create VENs and manage VENs. And perhaps most importantly, at the top here, you have the ability to schedule events and look at the current status of events. So basically, when you first fire up the VTN, you're going to want to go to the VTN config screen, and we'll kind of walk through these tabs at the top and just briefly explain what they're used for. The market context is used to define the names of your various DR programs. By default, there's a couple of DR programs that use a URL called a market context. We have market context 1 and market context 2. The target screen allows you to define groups of VENs and associate them with a name, which then can be used to dispatch events to a set of VENs. For this walkthrough, we're just going to keep things simple and just send our events to a single VEN. But if you're in a trial deployment with multiple VENs, you may want to come back to this menu option to define a group of VENs that you can then dispatch events to kind of with a single click. The VTN parameters, typically you won't need to do very much with. Perhaps the only thing that's important to note is that the EPRI VTN has a ID of EPRI_VTN, and you might need to configure that on your VEN. Probably not, but you might. And report request configurations allows you to define a report request that gets automatically sent to the VEN every time the VEN registers. So let's say that your VEN offers a telemetry report with real power data. You can use this particular menu option to configure a report request, and then every time the VEN registers, the VTN will automatically ask it to periodically send that telemetry usage report to it. There's some kind of tricky issues here, so make sure to read the VTN user guide to make sure you fully understand this before you go ahead and set it up. We're not going to use this particular feature for this video walkthrough. We're going to keep things simple and just request a single report from the VTN as part of our demo. Once you have the overall VTN configuration settings set up, you can come over and click on the VEN tab on the little sidebar, and it'll show you the current VENs that you have configured. In this case, we have 2 that are sort of set up by default. And for this demonstration, what we're going to do is create a new VEN and configure it and register it, and then send events to it and get reports from it. That'll be our goal. So click on Create VEN, click Standard, and then give the VEN a name, and we're just keep things simple. We're going to call this Test VEN. And for the common name, we'll enter in Test VEN. This common name field is really only of significance if you're using XMPP as a transport, and we're certainly not in this particular instance. Click Create VEN, and then we really only need to do one configuration setting in this particular field. What we're going to do is click on subscriptions, and we're going to subscribe our new VEN to a DR program. And by clicking the subscribe button, I've subscribed our VTN, our VEN to Market Context 1. That is the DR program that it's subscribed to. There are other options here, but they're not really necessary for the basic operations that we're going to perform. And I should have noted in my introduction that we're going to be working with a B profile VEN. The VTN does support the A profile, and should you be testing an A profile VEN, you can select the A profile from this particular menu option in order to use the A profile. But for now, we're just going to select the B option. The other thing that we're going to do is we're going to click this logging checkbox to allow us to see the various payloads that get exchanged back and forth between the VEN and the VTN. And I'm going to go ahead and click Save. So I saved the log settings. So now our VEN's all set up. I can click back on the VEN tab here, and now you see that we have 3 VENs configured, including one called Test VEN. At this point, what I'm going to do is set up my VEN so that the VEN can register with the VEN. And when the registration is complete, what we should see is this offline indicator go to online to indicate that the VEN is communicating with the VEN. So let's go ahead and drag our VEN over, and we just need to make a couple of simple changes to the VEN in order to use it. We're going to change the VEN name to Test VEN so that it matches the name of the VEN on the, configured on the VTN. And the only other change that we really need to make, or 2 other changes that we really need to make, we need to copy the IP address of the VTN, and we need to paste it into the URL field of the VEN. I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I think it looks like that worked okay. Oh, we're missing a backslash, so here we go. Now we're good. And I think the only other change that I'm going to make, since we're going to be doing some reporting activities a bit later, this VEN is already set up with a resource called Resource 1 down here at in this lower left-hand corner. But I'm going to go ahead and create some sort of mock usage for this particular VEN so that when we ask for a report, there are some actual values in the report rather than just 0 in terms of looking at telemetry usage. So I'm going to go ahead and put 10, or I'll put maybe a 1,000 watts or something in there, and go ahead and save it. So at this point, we're ready to initiate registration. So what I'm going to do is, probably when you're doing this, if you want to kind of make sure everything's kind of with a clean starting place, you can, on the VEN, you can click on the registration tab and say clear registration. And on the VEN, you can come to your VEN and click edit, go to registration, and also say clear registration. And that sort of forces both the VEN and the VTN into an unregistered state. At this point, I'm going to click on Start Polling on the VEN, and what should happen is that once we start polling, we'll see an exchange of registration payloads, an exchange of reports, and a variety of other payloads, and eventually the VEN will just start periodically polling the VTN about every 10 seconds. So let's go ahead and get that process started. We'll click Start Polling, and you can see on the screen the variety of payload exchanges occurring, and we've completed the registration at this point. And what you'll now see is about every 10 seconds, the VEN will go out to the VTN and see if there are any reports, or maybe there might be requests for reports or events or things of that nature. So if we come over here and update this screen, we can now see that the test VTN, the VEN that we created, is now online. And this online indicator really just says that it notices that a particular VEN is polling it periodically. So at this point, we can go ahead and create an event. I'm going to go ahead and, at this point, we're going to go ahead and set up an event in order to dispatch it to the VEN. So to do that, we're going to click on the Events tab, then click on Create Event, and click Standard. And there's really, although there's many input fields here, there's really just a few that we need to go ahead and, oops, I moved this around. There's really just a few that we need to complete. The ones that are important are the duration, how long we would like the event to last. And I'm going to go ahead and just put 10 minutes. And if you'd like to change the start time, by default, the start time is the current time. But if you'd like to change the start time, you can simply click on the start time field, and a little calendar and some sliders will come up that will allow you to modify the start time of the event. You'll need to specify a signal, and typically there's two signals that get used. One we call a simple signal, and the other one is, let's say, an electricity price signal. That's kind of typical. So right now we're going to go ahead and set up a simple signal. And by default, when you set up an event, it has a single time interval. There is a way in which you can configure events to have multiple time intervals. Let's say you had a 1-hour event, you could set up two 30-minute intervals with maybe a high load shed in the first 30 minutes and a moderate load shed in the second 30 minutes. But for starters here, whatever value we enter in here is going to represent a single interval that's the same as the overall duration of the event. The simple signal allows you to have values from 0 to 3, 0, 1, 2, or 3, typically with 0 being normal operations and 1 being moderate load shed, 2 being high load shed, and 3 being some kind of a special or emergency load shed. So I'm going to go ahead and specify 2 here for kind of an emergency load shed, and then I'm going to click Create Event. At this point, the event is created, but we still have to do a bit of configuration before we actually publish the event. And typically, the types of configuration that you would do would be to modify the signals. We don't have to do that in this particular case because we're using the simple signal, but let me go ahead and go into this menu option just so you kind of understand the kind of things that you might do. Some kind of events can have multiple signals, so you could actually add an entirely new signal to this event. or you could come in here and edit the existing signal that you created in the first step here. And there's a variety of things that you can change. Perhaps the most important to note here is that the simple signal does not require a particular unit of measure. But had we selected electricity price with a signal type of price, you would need to come into this particular menu option and specify currency per kilowatt hour. Once again, it's not necessary for the simple signal, but for other types of signals, you would need to come in and specify the units of measure for that particular device. Also, you'll notice here for intervals, we just have one interval and the duration is the same as the overall duration of the event, but you could set up additional intervals. Once again, we could have 2 5-minute intervals if we wanted, but we're not going to do anything, so we're going to go ahead and go back and click on the Event tab. For the simple signal that we're currently working with, the only additional change that you need to make is you need to specify a target. And the target is kind of who is the intended recipient of this event. And in order to set that, you simply click in this target field, and a drop-down menu will appear. And all I'm going to do is select the name of the VEN. And then I'm going to click Add. And I'm going to scroll down and click Save. So at this point, we have created an event with a simple signal with a value of 2 that's going to last 10 minutes. We've set a target using the VEN name. And now when I click Publish Event, what you're going to see happen is that the next time the VEN polls, you'll see the event get basically delivered. I'm going to click Publish Event, and then I'm going to go ahead and scroll the VEN in, and the next time this VEN polls, you should see the event come in. There's the event, it just came in. The VEN opted in. If we click over here on this Events tab, we can see that we now have a 10-minute active event running on the VEN, and we're kind of in good shape. Other things that you could do with this event if you wanted to, there's also an option here to cancel the event. So if I go ahead and click Cancel Event, you basically have to click Cancel, and then you need to click Publish again. And what should happen now is the next time the VEN polls, it's going to get a cancel event payload, and you'll notice that the status is now changed to canceled. That's really all there is to it with regards to sending an event and canceling an event. So let's shift gears and go ahead and try to go ahead and set up a report request so that the VTN can ask the VEN for a report. And in order to do that, you basically click on the VEN, and then you edit the VEN that you would like to request the report. So we're going to click Edit. Then we're going to click on Reports. And this shows you the reports that are currently available. So we have 3 different reports available on the VEN, a telemetry status, a telemetry usage, and a history usage report. And I'm going to go ahead and create a report request. And I'll give my report just some arbitrary name. We'll call this, report 1 or something. And click on report request. And so at this point, we've kind of got the shell of a report request, but the details aren't filled out yet. So what we need to do next is we kind of scroll down here, and we need to add a report to our request. And in this case, I'm going to go ahead and select a telemetry usage report. And we have a couple of options here. We can specify the amount of detail we want in the report, how long each time interval in the report is. Report back duration is how often the VEN is going to send the report. And duration is when you would like the VEN to stop sending you the report. So in this particular example, And you have to use some kind of funny syntax to do this. The example of that syntax is up here. But you basically can say something like, I want to have a report every 30 seconds. You kind of use this funny syntax. I think it's ISO 8061 is the duration. It's basically a sort of a calendar date duration syntax. So I'm going to ask for a 30-minute granularity. That means each interval in the payload is going to be 30 seconds. I'm going to ask it to deliver me the report every 30 seconds. And I'm going to ask for it to continue to send me the report, let's say for 4 minutes. Okay, that's going to be what I'll go ahead and set up. So we'll have basically one sample in each report. We'll get the report every 30 seconds, and it will continue to deliver reports to us at 30-second intervals for a total of 4 minutes. And we'll click Create Report Request. Okay, and there we go. So the report request has been generated. The next thing we need to do is that reports have different, the telemetry usage report supports multiple types of data. In this particular instance, it supports both real energy and real power. So we have to specify which of the possible types of data that we would like to have the VEN deliver to us. So in this particular instance, I'm going to go ahead and say, hey, give me both energy and power information, and I click Save. And at this point, we're ready to go. I can go ahead and I can click Create Report, and the final step in this process is to click Send Report, which will actually, it's kind of a poor naming here, but what it will actually do is send the report request to the VEN, asking the VEN to start delivering the report. So if we go ahead and click Send Report, and come over here and look at what happens the next time it polls, we can see here that the VTN has done a report request, and the VEN has actually delivered its first report. That's what this update report payload is. So if we just sort of watch this, we'll see that about every 30 seconds, the VEN is going to go ahead and send a report. There's another report that just got sent. So about every 30 seconds, the VEN is going to send a report to the VTN. Now, if we sort of come back to the VTN, there's a variety of ways in which you can sort of observe the data that is being sent to the VEN. One way to do it is to click on the VENs tab, come down to your VEN, and click on the data button here. And what this will do is show a graph. Right now, it's not. I'm going to go ahead and refresh. I guess that it hasn't accumulated. Oh, what I have to do here is select the type of data that I want to have it display. And then I click Refresh Graph. Let me come down here and try that again. So we had to do a little reset there and kind of repeat that exercise as the VTN was reporting some kind of 500 internal server error, but occasionally those things happen. This is open source software, so those things happen. So I just sort of repeated the report request, and everything's working smoothly now. And you can now see that sort of a graphical representation of the data coming from the VEN. I'll go ahead and drag the VEN over, and you can see over in this sort of log thing the various update reports that are being sent to the VTN by the VEN. And so at this point we have a graph, we can actually look at some different data by looking at the real power values, and those are the real power values coming from this particular VEN. And so that's about it. I'm not sure that I have a lot else to communicate. If you want to cancel a report, you can go ahead and select your VEN and edit, and then click on reports, and you can scroll down to the various report requests, and you can go ahead and either destroy the report request, but probably makes more sense to click cancel report and then click send report, and that will send a report cancellation payload to the VEN to let it know that you no longer want a periodic report. So at any rate, that's it. Hopefully that'll give you your bearings so that you can effectively use the EPRI VTN. Thanks much.